Okay, today we're going to talk about the compound interest section, or interest. And so these are the notes for that particular assignment, and some extra examples to help you along. So first of all, we need to know that there are some vocabulary words here: compound interest and simple interest, that you will be dealing with. Interest is the amount of money that you can make by putting your money into a bank account. Simple interest is where you get so much money based on a rate that the bank gives you every year. And so your money that you put into the bank account is sitting in the bank account as a savings account. And then at the end of the year, however much money that percentage is of the money that's in the bank account, then they pay that to you by putting it into your account. And thus now you have more money in the account. Compound interest is a little bit different because it's still interest that the bank pays you, but compound interest can be done more than once a year. So it might be done twice a year, 4 times a year, and they figure out and calculate how much money that is and then put it into your account, and again you're getting more money. So let's look at some examples. First, we want to be able to compute simple interest. Simple interest is computed by I equals PRT. I stands for interest. The P is the principal, and principal means the money that you started with. So how much money you put in the bank to begin with. R is the rate at which you're collecting this interest. It's a percentage, but when we use it, we want to change it to a decimal. And T is time, but time is always in years. So for example, let's say you deposit $800 into a bank account at 3.5% interest for 7 years. What is the interest on this? So we're going to plug those in where they need to go. So we're looking for I. Here is our P, 800. Our rate is here, but we need to change that to a decimal. So we move that decimal places 2 spaces to the left. So it is 0.035. And then time is 7 years. And then we want to multiply those out and get an answer. So you probably will need a calculator for these ones. And here we would get $800 and $800.25. So notice that rate isn't too big, and of course if you put more money in to begin with, then this amount of interest that you would make would be more. Let's look at another example. Let's suppose you deposit $10,000 in a bank account at 8% interest for 180 days. Now remember, our formula that we use is in years. So in this case, because years vary between 365 and 366 for a leap year, banks use, when we're talking about days, banks will say that a year is 360 days. And of course that benefits the bank, but that's one way to deal with it, with the changing of the days of the year. So let's figure this out. I equals 10,000 times 8%, so that's 0.08, times, and then we have to change that 180 days to how much of a year. So it's 180 divided by 360. So 180 divided by 360 is 1/2, or 0.5. And we need to continue to multiply that. So 10,000 times 0.08 times 0.5 gives us $400. Now this is the amount of interest. Remember, this isn't the total amount of money you have in your account. This is just how much money you will have in your account that they're going to add to it. So in this case, after that 180 days, there would be an additional $400. So you'd have $10,400 in your account. All right, let's talk about compound interest. The formula for compound interest is a little bit different. And the main thing that we want to see here is that it's P times 1 plus R to the T power. And T being years as well. Rate is still the percentage changed to a decimal, and then the P is the principal. So this is the formula type that is going on with this. Again, this is that they're going to give you that money that your that the interest is, but giving it to you more than once a year. So if we were asked to use the formula, let's look at an example. $5,000 at 6% for 7 years. Then we would say 5,000 times 1 plus 0.06 to the 7th power. Now how do we do this in our calculator? We have to remember our order of operations. So first we need to do what's inside the parentheses. We need to do 1 plus 0.06. So now we have 5,000 times 1.06 to the 7th power. So now we need to do 1.06 to the 7th power. And that's going to give you some sort of decimal. So I'm going to write that out here. 5,000 times 1.503630,259. So that was all the decimal places that I have. But if you leave that in your calculator and you just hit times 5,000 and hit enter, then you'll see that you'll have 75.18 and 15 cents. Now, in your work, they're going to give you a chart that you can look at in order to solve these problems. So you don't always have to use the formula. They have made charts so that you can just look at it to see what to do with it, or what numbers you need from it. So the way that the chart looks is that they have various percentage rates at the top. So they have several things here, and then over to the left they have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And so then there are numbers associated with this. Now the way this chart works is that this is looking at what happens to $1. So it's $1 and it's compounded annually. So if I have $1 in the account at these various rates, then after that many years I would know what how, what that would be worth as far as interest. Now, for example, if I had $1 in there and it was at the 2%, it would be 1.20000, so on and so forth. So as far as looking at a particular problem, all of these are going to be filled in with numbers, and this chart actually I think goes to like 100 years. So this number over here is years, and so you just follow what pattern. So if it tells you that which the problem we're going to look at is 4%, we'll want to look at this column here and then look to see what years we're looking at, and so on and so forth. So let's take a look at a problem that would involve this. Okay, so it will say something like use the chart to figure out what $3,000 at 4% interest for 5 years. So again, you'll look at that chart at the 4% and then at 5 years. Now it asks for a couple different things. So there, inside the problem, it'll say compounding, because we want to know what would our money look like if it was compounded more than once a year. So under the compounding, there is annually, which is once a year. There is semi-annually, which is twice a year, and then quarterly, and that's 4 times a year. So then we'll need to look at that chart and figure out what each of these are. So that's how much it's compounding. Then they'll ask you to find the total amount. So how much money is in the account with the $3,000 and the interest, and then just the interest amount. So you'll want to look at the chart and figure out what those are. For the total amount, we'll need to figure out what the interest is, which is from the chart. That's the number we're going to find. And then, of course, add that to the 3,000. So with that being said, a couple things to remember for this type of problem. So because the chart showed that it was annually, in order to find the semi-annually, we'll still look for under the 4% column at 5 years. But that number that we see, we are going to take half the rate. So for 5 year, or for 4%, to do semi-annually, we'll need to look at the 2% column. So in here we'll need the 2% column, and then we want to twice the years. So we'll do half the rate and then twice the years. So in order to fill out the semi-annually row, we'll need to do 2% and 10 years. So you'll look for the 2% column and then look at 10 years and look over to see what that number is. Okay, and so in that case, for semi-annually, in this case, would be 1.48024443. So that's the number you're going to be working with. For quarterly, we're still going to look at the same chart, but it's annually. So then we want to do 1/4 the rate. So 1/4 of 4 is 1. So we'll need to use the 1% column. And then 4 times the years. So 5 times 4 is 20. 20 years. So we'll want to look at the 1% column and then do 20 years. Okay? And then we'll be able to fill out each of these boxes based on that information. But that's how we read that chart. So now that you've watched this recording, what you'll need to do is give me a call on the phone, or give me a text or Skype Messenger. And then once you've done, once you call me, I will ask you some questions about this recording, and then you will get credit for it. Thanks. Have a great day. So you probably will need a calculator for these ones.